CNN is reporting that former President Trump tried to call a member of the White House support staff who was talking to the January 6th committee. According to the report, the staffer was not someone who communicated with Trump directly in the administration, but was concerned about the contact, according to the unnamed sources, and informed their attorney. They go on to say that the call was made after Cassidy Hutchinson's viral testimony. The staffer was allegedly in a position to corroborate part of what Hutchinson said under oath. The person is remaining anonymous, according to CNN. So the accusation here is that Trump was trying to perhaps influence a witness, influence them from corroborating Hutchinson's testimony. You know, people will argue a hit dog will holler, and this is evidence of the veracity of her testimony and that he's telling on himself, as they say.
No, I guess, but we're seeing an entirely one-sided procedure. We're seeing I mean, it's not a criminal procedure, so whatever, and they don't want to participate in it. But
the conservatives don't want to participate in it.
And then
also, they've been given an opportunity, to be clear.
Right. And then also the other news from this week, from yesterday, was that, or maybe it was from Monday, that, and I don't know how they got this exactly, but apparently there was a draft tweet that Trump didn't send it, but he had a draft tweet that also used the language "march on the Capitol." That was instructions to march on the Capitol following the speech he was going to give, which isn't the first. There's an actual tweet he sent that was like the "will be wild." He said it'll be wild or something like that. It was wild. So people. But my thing is, people keep turning to these things as more evidence of incitement. Oh, see, here's the clear evidence that he engaged in incitement, and now he's going to be prosecuted, and he's going to go to jail. And none of that is going to happen because it is not incitement for him to merely have instructed his followers to march to the Capitol. We can all do that. We can tell people to march to the Capitol. You can march to the Capitol. You can do it armed. It doesn't violate any law, except for the part where they actually went into the Capitol, which is not something he told them to do. I absolutely hold him morally responsible for what happened. He is unfit to be president. He should have been removed from office, but he's not going to jail because it's not a crime.
And I've said this before on this show. I feel like the conversation about how it's not going to result in Trump going to jail is used often as a way to take a sidestep away from a conversation about his culpability and his moral accountability. And I know that you just said you can hold him morally accountable, but when it's framed like that, he's not going to go to jail. Sure, he's culpable, but he's not going to go to jail. That, I think, really avoids what should be a substantive conversation about who this man is, especially if he's going to run for office again.
I'm doing therapy for CNN and MSNBC viewers. I'm trying to let them down gently. They're watching, thinking the season finale ends with Trump going to prison. There's like resistance fanfic. It's not going to happen.
Maybe that's
I'm trying
true.
to let them down gently.
Maybe that's
I'm looking
true.
out for them. I really. That's my all.
I'm not in that world, but again, and I also, and maybe that's true, but I do feel like I'm frustrated because I don't care at all about that whether or not Trump, no president, no one that rich and that powerful that has that much dirt on that many people is ever going to jail. That's just not the way the world works. But there is a conversation to be had here about how to prevent things like this in the future, who Donald Trump actually is, the extent to which there are many people who will continue to be in office in the Republican Party who corroborated and facilitated a lot of this behavior. And with respect to the tweet, I don't love the idea of using draft tweets to prove anything at all. The point is that the tweet wasn't sent, and it has a little bit of the whiff of a thought crime. Yeah. I'm also not wild about the idea of these tech companies handing over this kind of information
if that's
to
what
law
happened.
enforcement. If that's in fact
I don't know how they got it, and maybe that reporting is out there. It was not in any of the reporting I saw on this. But yeah, that is disturbing if they did that.
Yeah.
Especially given how much contact. I actually think that's something Kim is going to discuss in her radar today, but how much going along with what this administration, the Biden administration, tells them to do, social media companies, regarding election claims, fraudulent election claims, COVID, et cetera. So that would be a kind of a interesting thing. It's like, oh, here's this draft tweet.
Yeah, I've got some tweets in the drafts, and they're staying in the drafts.
Meanwhile, the New York Times has published a glowing profile of Ray Epps. The Times writes that Epps has suffered enormously in the past 10 months as right-wing media figures and GOP politicians have baselessly described him as a covert government agent who helped instigate the attack on the Capitol. Epps has come into the spotlight during hearings with the FBI over the agency's own involvement in January 6th. Here's Ted Cruz questioning the FBI about Epps' involvement back in January.
Did any FBI agents or FBI informants actively encourage and incite crimes of violence on January 6th?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Ms. Sadburn, who is Ray Epps?
I'm aware of the individual, sir. I don't have the specific background to him.
Well, there are a lot of people who are understandably very concerned about Mr. Epps. On the night of January 5th, 2021, Epps wandered around the crowd that had gathered, and there's video out there of him chanting, "Tomorrow, we need to get into the Capitol, into the Capitol." This was strange behavior, so strange that the crowd began chanting, "Fed, Fed, 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 Fed." Ms. Sandburn, was Ray Epps a Fed?
Sir, I cannot answer that question.
So some conservatives were accusing Epps of being an undercover FBI agent and instigating the events at the Capitol. There were also claims that Antifa had instigated the events of 1/6. I mean, is there a conspiracy problem? We talk about the kind of the fake news issue being perhaps handled poorly by the left. Is there a real conspiracy problem on the right?
Well, yes, but I mean, there's a conspiracy problem in on the right, on the left, in the mainstream. There's mainstream buy-in to conspiracies, like Russiagate, for example. The thing with Epps is that, so it could be, like, there's a lot going on January 6th. There's a lot going on during the riot. And we would not put it past the FBI to embed law enforcement in criminal activities. They've done this. Actually, I've talked on the show a lot about the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, which the more and more you learn about it, the more it was that the FBI was intricately involved in every stage of that. That it was not just they had knowledge of it, but it was in some sense being organized by them, because the person directing it was being paid by the FBI to direct it, to get it to a point where there was enough evidence to arrest all these people. So she was never in any danger. They knew the whole thing the whole time. And in fact, there's a question of whether it would have happened at all. Or it didn't happen, but whether it would have gotten to the stage it had gotten to if the FBI had not paid and directed people to carry it out. Yeah. So absolutely. So that we know they set up entrapment of Muslims and for terrorists, etc. So it is
Black Panthers,
KKK. There's an old joke, but when there's a KKK rally, it's all 16 people. 14 of them are undercover FBI agents or undercover journalists. So all that is fair. So it would not be insane for someone or some people or some force at January 6th to have the connection to the FBI. The issue is, and I was there, I was reporting at the time. It was, though, however, mostly a spontaneous a protest that turned into a riot where people were smashing windows and going in. Clearly not at the direction of the FBI or Antifa or any, these were, by and large, I know some of the people who went in, I know them from other right-wing events. They are actual Trump supporters. So the idea that you can pin this on someone like Ray Epps and then say it's actually the FBI, it falls apart under scrutiny. But without ruling out that, yes, sometimes there is some planning and there is some knowledge on the part of law enforcement and other groups infiltrate, the false flag type stuff. There can be an element of that, but it's pretty clear that by and large the majority of the violence and the trespassing was being committed sincerely by people on the right who got carried away and it was not part of some pre-planned thing in either direction.
Yeah,
so that's what I would say to that.
That's the problem with conspiracy theories. They're easy to believe because they're often very plausible, especially.
And there are elements of truth sometimes in various things.
Absolutely.
You can't rule them all out, but we can rule a lot of them out, or some things have a grain of truth. It's trickier than all or nothing. But
better to be conspiratorial than gullible, some people say, and that's how we end up in these kinds of situations. So I don't know. We'll have more rising for you after this.